Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. I also want to talk about another great American who is the sponsor of this podcast, and that, of course, is my good friend Mike Lindell. He has been canceled out of so many box stores for simply standing up for his own political opinion. And disagree or not, or support him or not, it is a fundamental right of every American to be able to voice their opinion, and that absolutely includes politics. That absolutely includes issues that are central to our culture. That includes faith. Mike is such a very sincere Christian, and I am proud to consider him a friend, and he is, of course, a friend of this show. So right now, there is a special on mypillow.com. Click on the new radio listener specials. Get deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including a great towel set, which is a 6-piece set. It includes 2 bath, 2 hand towels, 2 washcloths, made in the USA, regularly $109.99, now just $39.99, but you have to use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna. That tells Mike that you listen to this show, you're happy that he is a sponsor of this show, and you will get great discounts, but use the promo code Jenna, that's Jenna, either at mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Well, happy Thursday, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and I'm so excited today to talk about the movie 2000 Mules. This is the movie that the mainstream media and, of course, legacy media and all of the leftists and even some on the establishment right are refusing to talk about. So, of course, we need to talk about it. So here to discuss is my good friend and Salem media host Dinesh D'Souza, who, of course, is the producer and also starred in the movie 2000 Mules. So, Dinesh, I was so privileged to join you and President Trump and all of the others at the premiere last week at Mar-a-Lago. That was an amazing time and such an amazing reaction to this movie. So, first question, of course, is how is this being received, and why is this so important right now that you covered this particular topic?
Well, we knew that the movie would be, in a sense, facing an uphill struggle because, as you know, Jenna, this is the most banned topic in America. On digital platforms, they ban other topics. They ban abortion, they ban the trans issue, they ban COVID, but no topic is more aggressively banned than election fraud. And of course, it's all based on the idea that there wasn't any, and that there's no proof of any, and this was the most secure election in history. All kind of dogmatic claims that should be open to intelligent scrutiny, but evidently aren't. So,
Yeah, and
So
I was
we've
I was
had
going to say, I
to.
mean, it's so interesting when the left has this claim that this was the most secure election in history, but they don't actually ever offer any proof or evidence to back up that claim. They just expect all of us to believe that. And when we even question the outcome or the integrity of the 2020 election, then that is somehow tantamount to criminal activity. I mean, they're trying to disbar all of the attorneys, myself included, that were part of the advocacy for President Trump and even just questioning the election. So why is this movie now so important?
Well, I think the real power of the film is that it exposes election fraud in a visible way, in a documentable way. It shows that the fraud must have been coordinated. There's no way that the fraud we're showing could have been somehow spontaneous. So it's not a little fraud here, a little fraud there. It's coordinated fraud. And when you look at the magnitude of it by itself, I'm not saying it's the only type of fraud, but I'm saying it by itself, it's sufficient to swing the balance in the presidential election. So all the claims normally made by the left, well, even if you have fraud, it clearly didn't make a difference. Well, if we're right, it did. And so there's no excuse for not looking at these claims, looking at this evidence. The left, by the way, it's interesting. They have these fact checkers who are like 20 and 30 somethings, and they're trying to comment on geo tracking, about which they know literally nothing. They haven't even researched the way in which election laws vary across states. So they'll say something like, well, of course, some states do allow harvesting. Well, okay, maybe they do, but we're talking about 5 states. What are the laws in Georgia and Arizona and Pennsylvania? I mean, they don't know. So they don't bother to tell you in these key states, which are the subjects of this film's inquiry, what are the laws? And is paid ballot trafficking allowed in a single one of those states? I'm not spoiling the suspense by answering no. So the caliber, the intellectual caliber of these fact checks at AP, PolitiFact, very, very low.
Yeah, and there is a marked difference between ballot harvesting and ballot trafficking. And that was a point that you made very clearly in this film. So, talk a little bit about that and why this is such a big difference, because the left continues to say, well, ballot harvesting is legal. But as you just mentioned, paid ballot trafficking is not.
Yeah, so the most liberal ballot vote harvesting law is in California. You can give your ballot to kind of anyone, and they can, I can go to my neighbor and say, here's my ballot, you drop it off. No problem, that's legal. But again, I can't go to my neighbor, even in California, and say, here's my ballot, I'll give you $100 if you drop it off, or I'll pay you $10 to drop the moment money enters into the picture, you corrupt the process. You introduce issues of bribery. Is the voter being compensated for casting a vote? And so on. So in no state is it legal to deploy these mules who are paid operatives delivering, by the way, not this. In Georgia, you can give your ballot to a family member. If you're in a confined facility, you can give it to a caregiver. So the idea here is that somebody who is a trusted custodian of that ballot, it's a whole different matter to say you got nonprofit groups in these key states. They're collecting hundreds of thousands of ballots. And look, if it was all on the up and up, they would just go put all the ballots in one drop box. The very fact that they're hiring mules in the middle of the night to wear gloves so as not to leave fingerprints, all of this, once you watch the movie, there's no doubt you're dealing with a criminal cartel.
Yeah, and you actually have the video. I mean, that's what's remarkable about this. It's not just allegations or it's not just possibilities, but you actually show the data and show the videos. And so a lot of this geo tracking, a lot of the fact checkers have said, well, this is so imprecise. And so there are other plausible explanations. And so, even though you have the video of these people, maybe they're just dropping off ballots for 20 of their family members. And so, there are other reasonable explanations. But in terms of geo tracking, I mean, isn't this the exact same type of technology and the exact same type of tracking that the DOJ itself even said may get into some privacy concerns if the government harnesses this type of technology because it is so precise?
Exactly. And a couple of years ago, and the technology is even better since then, Justice Roberts reviewed the precision and the accuracy of geo-tracking, and he said it's about the same as putting an ankle bracelet on a prisoner and being able to monitor the movements that way. So he's basically saying it's an exact science. Look, the CDC is using it to track whether people are social distancing. Well, if geo-tracking wasn't accurate to within 6 feet, they couldn't do that. There would be no point in trying to do that. So it's very accurate science. Typically, what the fact checkers here do is they start calling around academics. Until they find an obliging academic who basically citing data from like 10 years ago or 15 years ago goes, well, yeah, depending on cell phone signals, it's accurate to about 30 feet. That's old information. By the way, GPS, 15 or 20 years ago wasn't all that accurate either. It's gotten just a lot better. And that's why your directions when you're driving a car today are much better than they were a decade or two decades ago. Look, if you're dropping off the ballots of your family members, you're not going to go to 10 or more drop boxes. There's no reason to do that, let alone in the middle of the night.
Right. And that was one of the things that struck me was several of these instances that you actually have on video show the same person who's going to multiple drop boxes. I think there was one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there was one instance where someone went to actually 24 different drop boxes in a single day. What is the alternate explanation or even the possibility that someone with this precise enough of technology would go within the vicinity of 24 different Dropbox locations in a single day, much less in the middle of the night? I mean, that should be conclusive proof that something nefarious or at least something suspect is going on that everyone who cares about free and fair elections should want to know the answer to.
Well, this is the point that when geo-tracking is showing people going from Dropbox to Dropbox to Dropbox, and by the way, geo-tracking can easily distinguish someone walking by a Dropbox from going to a Dropbox. And the reason is it is tied to coordinates in time. If you go to a Dropbox, you're going to have to stop there, open your backpack, take out the ballot. So it's going to show you stationary at that Dropbox and then essentially migrating to the next Dropbox. Now, the point is that your cell phone has an ID inside of it. It's kind of a digital DNA. And in some ways, it's even better than video because we actually do show in the film. Ben Shapiro made this point. He's like, well, you don't show in the film the same mule at more than one Dropbox. We actually do. But the problem is that the video quality of these Dropboxes is so horrible. Half the time, the surveillance camera is not even pointed at the Dropbox. So you get the guy from the side or from the back, and you can't tell exactly it's the same person. So here's the point I'm trying to make. The geo-tracking settles the issue because it's kind of like saying, you got a serial killer. He went to 5 different houses and he left his DNA in all of them. But only one of the houses had a video camera, so you can actually see him in the house. And then here comes Ben Shapiro. Well, I don't have video of him in all the other houses. Well, true. But to be honest, the fact that he left his DNA in those places is even more dispositive. It's even stronger evidence than if you had video. And quite frankly, if the other places didn't have video, that's why he doesn't show up in the video, because there wasn't any video at that Dropbox. If the states had followed the rules and installed video at all the Dropboxes, you'd be seeing the same mule going from Dropbox to Dropbox, and he would be there in every single video.
Yeah. Well, and exactly what you just mentioned. I mean, that would be conclusive proof that a jury could find beyond any and all reasonable doubt the highest standard of the law based on just the presence of DNA that a person was at that location, or even fingerprints. I mean, we don't always have to prove everything by video. We actually had criminal convictions before video surveillance was part of technology. And so, it just seems like there are so many people, even on the right, that just want to create alternative explanations because they don't want to take something just for what it plainly shows. And they don't want to have to confront the issue that maybe, just maybe, there wasn't only fraud, there was outcome determinative, widespread fraud that the mainstream media and the left wanted to suppress, they didn't want to acknowledge, and that we as the American people are going to have to confront when we see this type of documentary. And so, Dinesh, what are you hoping to accomplish in terms of showing all of this now? So everyone that I've talked to who's seen it is very upset because they're looking at the proof for themselves. What do you want to come of this and actually happen now based on showing just this one type of fraud? Because as you mentioned, there were other things that happened in the administration of the election that also are problematic. This is just one type of problematic instance.
Yeah, so, coming back to this issue of like, we're not sure if you stopped, 10 feet away from the Dropbox, all of this can be easily settled. All you have to do is go question the mules. True the Vote has the cell phone IDs of all of them. They don't have their names, but law enforcement can easily obtain their names. All you do is you get a warrant based on probable cause. You then go to the cell phone provider and unmask these individuals. You go talk to them. Who paid you? Who put you up to this? Is it a fact? We have identified your cell phone on this location. Now, the guy could say, I gave my cell phone to my wife and she was at that location. Fair enough. But the point is, who can be against investigating this to be able to, because there are many other tools to pin down, including the guy fessing up and going, hey, listen, they paid me some money. I wasn't the guy who came up with this idea. So the very idea that you've got people on our own side who are like, oh, don't nothing to see here, folk, is very, very creepy and suspicious, because after all, we're the ones being hurt by the fraud. And so you'd think you'd want to cross every T and dot every I to figure out. And even if the documentary itself, I mean, I don't have law enforcement powers. I can't raid the offices of these nonprofits. So my point is the very idea that the film is not an important pointer to things that need to be further investigated. I mean, that's the next step, right? That would be a logical next step. By the way, they are taking that next step in Yuma, Arizona. The mule interviewed in the movie is from Yuma. The Yuma Sheriff's Department has opened up a new investigation, really in response directly to the movie.
Yeah, which is exactly what the law enforcement is designed to do, which is to have an unbiased investigation and simply ask the questions and see where the evidence leads. And it's so frustrating to so many Americans that it seems like the outcomes that are politically driven are so much more important than just going where the evidence leads and actually having investigations that protect and preserve the right of Americans to actually have our vote count fairly without this type of fraud or any fraud. And it also seems like, Dinesh, that this is only an instance where when it's President Trump, that's what makes this taboo. When it's anybody else, if this had happened to a Democrat in California or in New York, then this would be all over the national news every day. There would be a ton of investigations. This would be, the biggest thing that has ever happened, that, a Democrat was cheated out of his seat by a Republican. But when it comes to President Trump, there's a double standard. I think that's so frustrating as well.
I agree. I also think that what we're dealing with is, first of all, there's a big difference between a congressional race. By the way, a congressional race was overturned a couple of years ago, 4 years ago now, 2018, in North Carolina, based upon exactly the same type of paid ballot trafficking that we're talking about in the movie. So the whole idea that it's a done deal, you can't overturn an election. A congressional election was, in fact, overturned, now not by a court, by an elections board, but nevertheless based on the same criteria. The other point is this is unprecedented in U.S. history, to my knowledge. You can go back to 1960. Maybe there was some fraud in Cook County, Illinois, that put Kennedy over Nixon in an extremely close race. But coordinated fraud in all the key swing states, I've never even heard of that. Certainly not in modern American history.
Right. And that's where, when the 2020 election happened, and then in the immediate aftermath, when we were still getting evidence and there were still, all of these witnesses that came forward and all of these affidavits, and, just with what we had at the time, it was such a very short time frame. And you made a point of saying that in the movie as well. And President Trump even acknowledged from the stage there in Mar-a-Lago that it was such a short time frame. But this type of investigation typically takes a lot of time and years, but the truth is coming out. The truth isn't going to be suppressed. And yet there are still people, like you tweeted, I believe it was yesterday, that Tucker Carlson, in interviewing Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote, didn't allow her to actually speak about the movie on his show. Can you talk about that and what actually happened and what she told you about that? Because I think a lot of people trust Tucker to be more of a reporter and, someone who would be willing to question where the evidence leads.
I'm really not quite sure what's going on at Fox. I'm not sure if this is some kind of generic Fox ban on mentioning the movie. I'm not sure if there's something specific to Tucker. There was a little bit of bad blood that went back several months, in which one of our teaser trailers, Tucker was going to have Catherine Engelbrecht on, and she said, oh, we have this great teaser trailer for the movie. And then the Tucker people said to me, Dinesh, we're going to have to cut your trailer from 90 seconds to 45 seconds. And I'm like, yeah, sure. You want the front part or they want the back part? They're like, no. We want the middle part. And I was like, the middle part. So you kind of want to cut out D'Souza Media, Salem Media, and then you want to cut out the fact that it's part of a movie. You're basically stealing our content, pretending like you produced the segment. I go, that doesn't really that's not really very fair. So why don't you just have Catherine on? Don't show the clip because it's not your clip. If you're going to show it, you kind of need to say that it's part of a movie and so on. So then they became unbelievably, not Tucker, this was his producer, Justin B. Wells. He's like, oh, Dinesh, you're finished. You'll never be on Tucker ever again. Abusive type of behavior. And the
Wow.
problem is when you have a network and it's the only place to go, I think it encourages this kind of arrogance. And where people basically feel like they can brutalize you because ultimately you're going to shut up and take it because otherwise you're going to be banned on Fox News. And so I decided, I'm not going to say anything about it. But then when recently Catherine Engelbrecht went back on Tucker and they specifically told her, don't say a word about the movie, I thought, well, this is a little too much. The movie is now out. People are talking about it. And think of how weird that Tucker segment was. They're discussing the content of the movie under explicit directives not to mention the movie. Very creepy.
Yeah, it would seem like the whole point of the interview is to say, so then go watch the movie for yourself and then make an informed decision. And people go on, Fox and other networks all the time. And they come on my show, they come on your show to promote their content, whether it's other networks, it's their books, it's their movies. I mean, that's not an odd sort of request. That's not at all an odd sort of thing. But, but this type of thing is pretty typical for a lot of networks, unfortunately, who think that they do have kind of a corner on the market, and you're going to be so intimidated that you may not get invited back that you'll just roll with the punches. But I think that's why a lot of Americans and informed conservatives are choosing non-traditional platforms like Salem Media, like your podcast, Dinesh, and they want to go and subscribe to your locals page and your Rumble channel and all of these things to get content that isn't being covered on the mainstream media, because they're starting to see that suppressing content and also choosing for them what's newsworthy is not actually what they know is newsworthy. And that's a really big deal. And I think with the alternative platforms and the rise of the podcast world with online streaming and so many different platforms, and even Elon Musk wanting to make changes at Twitter so that people can amplify things. And listen, maybe not all of it you believe, and there may be some quote unquote misinformation, but who actually gets to determine that? The listener. The listener gets to choose for themselves what they want to view and what they want to think about different content. And that's why your movie is so important, because for people who have been told since November 3rd of 2020, there was no fraud. Well, we know that's not true. That's never true in any election. But then there's no widespread fraud. Then there's no outcome determinative fraud. Well, now they can actually go and see for themselves and make an informed decision. And then actually, as Americans, we need to determine what to do about this. So where can people find this movie for themselves? Also listen to your content. And thank you so much for actually having the courage to stand up and cover this sort of thing, because you're right. This is such a taboo topic, and people who have come after me, they've come after Rudy Giuliani, they've come after President Trump for so long, because we're still willing to talk about election integrity. You are putting yourself right in the midst of the fire. And that takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of guts and boldness. So thank you for never, ever backing down from the truth.
Jenna, thank you. That means a lot. Look, we've made the movie a big success without any help from Fox News, without them mentioning the movie. That tells you something right there. I had to develop a kind of whole new business plan for this movie because I didn't want to put it on Amazon Prime or Apple iTunes, places where all my earlier movies can be found. I didn't want to put it anywhere where anyone could take it down. So it's up on the salemnow.com. It's obviously available through 2000mules.locals.com. We've had a kind of innovative theatrical strategy. We might go back into the theater because a lot of theaters are like, oh my gosh, you did amazing. We want it in our theater. So we're actually considering a sort of second round of theatrical. So, but what this proves is that you can release creative content today on places like Rumble. The guys at Rumble told me, Dinesh, you're sort of rewriting the rules of the internet a little bit, because before this movie, filmmakers would not have thought I can put a film on Rumble. I can I can charge $10. I get to keep 9. You don't have 7 middlemen who take all the money. So basically, I can't monetize my content. We're making it so that the creator and the consumer are put in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the creative technology is all about, and making sure that we can continue to get content out there that people want to consume without these middlemen and without this type of censorship, even if it's everybody talks about, okay, First Amendment, it's not necessarily government, it's these private platforms, but having alternatives like Rumble, like On Locals, are really good for people who are content creators that are going against the prevailing narrative. So I really wish you the best of success. I really enjoyed the movie, and I would encourage everyone, if you haven't seen it, don't listen to the fact checkers, don't listen to the naysayers, don't listen to what's trending on Twitter. Go and watch it for yourself and decide for yourself what you think after reviewing the evidence for yourself. That's exactly what juries do every day in a courtroom. They look at all of the evidence and then they make a determination for themselves. You need to put yourself in the jury box and you need to make a determination for yourself what you think about the outcome of the 2020 election, and especially in light of this new documentary. So Dinesh, thank you so much. Everyone needs to also follow you. Go to 2000mules.com, and really appreciate you so much. Thank you for your time here.
Thank you, Jenna.
Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903.